So hello everyone. I hope you guys are having a great time. Today we're going to talk about tokenomics, specific topic, because we all heard about tokenomics, but do we really know exactly how we can, bring tokenomics to the next level from a decentralized standpoint? So today we're going to talk mainly about three things. Educational aspects, of course. So existing token economics. And we're likely going to use like an example, which is going to be like a coin token deployed on the Ethereum chain. And we're going to study a bit how it was announced by the team, what we can see on the chain, how we could bring that to the next level. Then we're going to go for what is decentralized vesting and what is decentralized liquidity. So these are somehow tied together in a way that the blockchain allows to leverage similar functions to achieve these two different objectives related to vesting of single tokens and liquidity tokens, so liquidity provider tokens. And as an opening, based on what we learned from the second part, we're going to discuss about the access to this data that is coming from the chain that we may leverage a bit today, but not necessarily enough. So before going into that, just a little bit of introduction about why is that me talking about this? Like, why am I legitimate somehow to talk about these different topics? So I founded with another member that is in this room, the company called UniCrypt Network. So what we do is essentially providing decentralized services on-chain. So it's like a B2B approach. So we basically serve other blockchain companies that want to bring themselves in a more secure position from a blockchain standpoint. So we provide decentralized vesting services, decentralized liquidity locks, on-chain pre-sales, so we named themselves initial liquidity offering, but it's like a kind of a slang with some particularities, obviously, but on-chain pre-sales, understand that like this. And we also have minting capabilities and staking and farming options. But today, we're really going to focus on what is related to token vesting and to liquidity lockers. So let's start with token economics. I think that this pie is probably, not necessarily this specific one, but the tokenomics pie is very common for all of us in this room. Like, if you ever studied or looked into a blockchain project, or not even a blockchain project, but sometimes it also works with non-crypto companies that are not necessarily tokenized, you have this kind of representation, like splitting of a token supply. So, of course, here we have a specific example with pre-seed investors, seed investors, strategic, private 1, private 2, private 3, strategic 2, 3, 4. All tokens have different levels when it comes to tokenomics and investors. But then you also have sometimes validator rewards. So this is interesting because validator rewards may imply that you are in a chain in a token where you have proof of stake and proof of activity from some stakeholders of the token itself, and therefore you want to reward them. So this is an interesting one. Then you have customer incentives, reserves, and all of that. But if you look at all the different tokenomics pie that you may have had a look yourself in the past, you always have, not always, but you have some similarities that you can observe that are investors. So you have investor schedules and investors like portion of the supply. Then you have partners. So partners, we can think about business partners. You can think about backers. You can think about infrastructure providers. You can think about advisors, pretty much anything. Then active participants. So active participants is mostly related to the community itself. So you have people that may stake their token, that may work for a bounty. It's basically people doing something rather than just holding in your ecosystem. Don't get me wrong. Holding is also being somewhat passive-active because you're actually part of something, and you can later on vote and so on. And then you have the team control. which is itself very interesting because most of the tokens that you would see out there nowadays, especially when you go for lower capitalization, they will try to hold as a team as less tokens as possible. Dev doesn't control the supply. But if you think about it from like a long-term perspective, you would rather have the team themselves controlling more because that means they're themselves in a position to provide more later on to the participants that are joining the ecosystem. And from a distribution standpoint, you also have these things to take into account. So this is the starting point of how to read somehow token economics. And then, especially when it comes to investors or team or marketing allocations for tokens, you have what we called schedules, vesting schedules. So in this example, you will say, for example, that you have cliffs. So the private seed people, they got invested at a certain price, they got a certain portion of the supply, and then they have to wait for a couple of months before getting what we have here, for example, that is linear vest, 16 months. So far, please keep in mind that everything that we're seeing here is off-chain. So that's basically you, me, and everyone else in this room reading the white paper and believing what's in the white paper, off-chain, right? So here's just an example, right? So you have TG allocations, linear vesting, some creative stuff. Sometimes everything is unlocked at start because we trust the team. That can happen as well. But what that means essentially is that you have different schedules for different tiers of participants on an ecosystem. Then you have supply changes over time. So it can be minting additional tokens. It can be just circulating supply evolving over time, which is usually what we see, right? For example, if you take Phantom, that blockchain has like a different tokenomics than any other project. But for example, that as of today, a certain percent of the supply that is, based on the total supply is already circulating on the market, and that this is, you can just basically do your calculation when it comes to supply changes. My point being about Phantom is that they created a certain number, and then they emit it over time, right? And then you have, of course, and that's the interesting part that is going to lead us to the next slide, the unlocking mechanics. Like, how do these tokens are hitting the market? Like, do they stay in some wallets? Do they just get sent from a wallet to another? Let's, try to understand how it works behind the scenes when it comes to what is the circulating supply of a token. So, before going into a specific example, when you look at token economics for a specific or for all the projects that you may be interested into, you sometimes need to look into additional parameters that are not necessarily on the tokenomics pie itself. So if all the terms here don't necessarily ring a bell, it's totally fine. It's because most of the tokens that we see on the market, and especially the big capitalizations, they don't have, for example, these elastic supplies, they don't have it most of the time. So if you don't know what the elastic supplies mean, like rebasing tokens or reflection tokens, that is another name for rebasing just by playing with different functions on the whatever, That's just specific stuff. And then you also have, these potential additional things that may influence the tokenomics themselves, such as the governance, the taxes when you do transfers, when you do trades, when you go from one chain to another. Then you have minting schedules that can be interesting to have a look at. Centralization level. So centralization level is very interesting when it comes to lower capitalization, because you can oftentimes see tokens where, so you see the tokenomics pie, right? So you have this amount for this portion, for this portion, for this portion, and then you have, say, 10% taxes on sale, 8 on buys, blah, 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 blah. It can be very creative. But what's important to check when you look at this is, can it change over time? So centralization level is what is the ability of the team itself to change these functions that may have an influence on the tokenomics. And it goes with upgradability, like what can happen in the future. Like we always tend to believe that, or we don't tend to believe, it's more like a narrative that, hey, blockchain is immutable, it's decentralized, nothing can move. But what about checking the token contracts? Sometimes they can be upgraded for the good or for the worse. It depends, right? So this is, of course, this list is just a few examples. But if you want to go really deeper into analyzing token economics, you can basically spend a lot more time on this. And today we really want to focus on the vesting, so I won't expand too much on the contracts functions themselves. So now, let's use an example. So I guess let's poll quickly. Who in this room has heard about ApeCoin? Right, so most of you, right? Which is not surprising because this token launch was like very, hyped and made a lot of noise across the industry. So ApeCoin, I will start by a saying from, it's not a saying, it's more like a quote that came from Messari.io, which is like an analytics website. So at launch, roughly 26% of the total token supply was unlocked. The remainder of the tokens is unlocked over 48 months, which means an average of 1.5% of the supply becomes unlocked every month. And then here, you have a document, like a diagram that was provided by ApeCoin team, explaining you the different, release of tokens over time. And as you can see, you have like very small, stairs here, which indicates that the releases, the releases are not at a block level, but mostly at a month level with like potentially manual unlocks. But I am not sure at this stage, I just watched at the diagram and read a quote from Messari, which is like a neutral third party in this case. But other than that, it's just ApeCoin white paper, if you want, or equivalent. By the way, this is not specifically, against or for ApeCoin. It's just like a general, general use case or general, study for any token out there. I just took ApeCoin for the sake of, talking to all of us in this room. So now, if we go to Etherscan or to a block explorer, in this case it's going to be Etherscan because ApeCoin is an ERC20 token, and you can read a lot from the chain. You can read a lot from the chain because you can see who is holding what. So I guess probably a lot of us here already explored Etherscan or used a block explorer. So you can easily figure different observations when you go to a chain explorer and figure out what's the distribution of any token. So here, sorry if of course, you cannot really see the different addresses, but it was just to illustrate. As you can see in the top holders, so what Etherscan calls the rich list, you have hot wallets. So hot wallets from exchanges, because this is a token that is traded on Binance or on, say, Coinbase and all these big exchanges. And then you have multi-sig safes. So hot wallets, nothing surprising. But multi-sig safes, it's interesting, because that means the team behind ApeCoin has taken care of the security aspect of one person cannot necessarily execute transactions without the validation of at least another address, which in 99% of the cases is not controlled by the same person. So this is the first observation, multi-sig safe. Then, as you cannot see, but I can see it for you, here you have a lot of 5 million tokens holdings per different wallet. So 5 million tokens splitted all on the same date on different wallets. It indicates that these portions of the supply are referring to the monthly manual unlocks. So that's another thing that we can take from this Etherscan, is that the supply is probably getting unlocked at this rate, 5 mil per month, cool. But as you can see, because these addresses are not contracts anymore, that means they're not multi-sig safes. So less secure, right? In some way. And then, if you go to not the first pages of Etherscan Explorer of who is holding ApeCoin, and I put this in parentheses because it's less relevant in the case of a big capitalization. I'll explain you why. unlocked liquidity provider positions. So when you have big capitalizations, like very large market cap projects, they tend to provide more liquidity on centralized exchanges, such as Binance, Coinbase, and they don't have that much of importance towards their Uniswap pool, PancakeSwap pools, like decentralized exchange pool, right? So that's why it's less relevant to focus on the liquidity provider positions. But that being said, it's noticeable that if someone from ApeCoin team provided liquidity on a pool that is on Uniswap v2 or v3, for example, then you can notice that this liquidity is held, this liquidity position represented by LP tokens, is held by a single address. And this single address, if things go wrong, there is a hack, there is a compromise of an address, the liquidity could be, in theory, pulled from the pool, which is a security not the best practice. So, before describing what is trustless vesting, I just want to say that at UniCrypt Network, we have like a position where we believe that human DNA has a form of greed inside of us. You know, it's not like we can control it, like because it's part of our DNA. You can say, hey, he's greedy, I am not greedy, but it's part of our DNA. So to a certain extent, we're all greedy. The point is, I would rather trust a third party that is fully neutral, aka non-human, aka a chain, rather than any one of us. So it's not against ApeCoin, it's not against CZ, it's not against Vitalik. It's just, let's trust someone that is fully neutral, you know, achieve the neutral third party by leveraging the chain capabilities. That's what we're trying to do. So now, trustless vesting is a feature that is allowing, for example, ApeCoin team to lock tokens over time, but without anyone that is like a physical person to say and to have a possibility to act, to actually change a vesting schedule. So if we say, hey, it's 5 million tokens per month, so that's, I don't know, 1.2 million tokens per week, so that's per day, per second, per block. We can leverage on-chain settings on a vesting trustless contract. So you say to a token contract, like, hey, I want to lock this amount of tokens from this date to this date. This is the block emission rate. This is the lock owner. So it's like, for example, BAYC holder, the Bored Apes guys, that can claim these tokens at a later date. So we basically do on-chain settings, and then we send these tokens to what we call a vesting smart contract. And that's where it becomes interesting. Me, you, ApeCoin, you don't have a backdoor. Once the tokens are sent to the contract, that's the contract that does, you know, the rule. And this is the same rule for everyone. There is no, oh yeah, but I locked it for too long. Oh yeah, but we need to list on another exchange. No, the chain is neutral. So that's, you know, one of the most important things here is that there is no control from anyone once you use trustless vesting. And that's the beauty of it, because there is no change of plans, you know. And then you also have transparency. Why do you have transparency? So say you have a token XYZ. Token XYZ has 10 rounds of investors. These 10 rounds of investors, they have different schedules. But they all have a portion of their investment that is available when the token is launching, for example. The transparency makes it, you know, like more fair for everyone involved, because if it's handled by a smart contract, then there is no, okay, so I'm a token owner, I send the tokens to the strategic investors, family and friends. I send the tokens then to someone else, and then to someone else, then to someone else. If you use the chain, block number 1, 2, 3, 4, everyone can claim at the same time. There is no error. Once it's just a matter of making it better for everyone, thanks to a neutral third party. Sorry for repeating myself, but that's the main point. Precision, block time is the same for everyone, right? And then security and trust, because of course it goes back to the question that, hey, is the vesting contract secure as well? Because why would I trust a smart contract that can itself be manipulated? Hence the contracts that have no backdoor. But the point is, you basically position yourself in a more trustful position if you leverage such services. Because like I said before, you cannot change the vesting schedules. You cannot do things that may hurt your ecosystem and benefit some part of your ecosystem. It's just like you made a statement clear at the start, you leverage the chain to actually, instead of having people trusting your white paper, you make people trusting the chain. The narrative is different. And that enhances your trust. And then you can have also off-chain influence. That's the last one. Off-chain influence is sometimes you could have things that may influence your own token, your own ecosystem, that are not coming from the chain itself. For example, I need 10 more tokens unlocked in advance if it's 28 degrees in split. That's off-chain influence, right? So what you would need here is to have what we call an oracle. So it brings you off-chain information on the chain, and you can leverage this information once it's on the chain to influence the vesting smart contracts. So that's why I put, not a full line here, because that's where the border is between centralization and fully decentralization. Because if you can have off-chain influence, then you can have manipulation. We could have someone that is heating split to make the temperature be higher, or just manipulate the source of the oracle, like the source that is giving the temperature. So this is something that is possible, and that's a bit of an opening at the same time, because do we really want to have this off-chain influence? It can be also a good thing. Like say you have a certain number of holders, or you have reached more adoption than you thought, and then you need to adapt the token economics of your own ecosystem for the own benefit of it. So you could do a proposal before, and based on the result of the proposal that is neutral, but because it comes from the chain, then you could leverage this off-chain influence because people are pulled, then it gives you something on-chain, and you change the vesting schedule according to the community vote itself, right? So that's for trustless vesting. And then you have the other one that is trustless liquidity. So this part is mostly adapted to, it's mostly related to decentralized exchanges that are pool-based, because you have different mechanics on decentralized exchanges. But I think the most used and the most common nowadays is pool-based. So namely Uniswap. And then you have, of course, forks and so on. But Uniswap is what we're going to use as an example here. So on this AMM pool, so imagine you have Ethereum against XYZ. So this is the pair. You have people trading in and out ETH and XYZ, right? So like I said a bit earlier, someone is what we call the liquidity provider. So the liquidity provider is the guy that is 99% of the cases the token owner, or the person in charge of the finance of the company that is going to put in the pool XYZ, Ethereum. Once he does that, he gets a LP position, fungible or non-fungible, Uniswap V2, V3. But he gets the ownership of the liquidity position. So the most common rug pool would be people trading ETH, like putting ETH in the pool, going out with XYZ, and once there is enough ETH in the pool, the liquidity provider that's a malicious person, in this case, could just say, thank you, everyone, I pulled the liquidity, and everyone is left with a worthless token, aka rug pool. So if we just go a bit back, this person that is holding the liquidity, what they can do to make it decentralized and to also make it more secure is to take this liquidity provider position and put it away from themselves. And when I say put it away from themselves, that means locking it in a smart contract, right? So it's kind of similar to the vesting mechanic. You're giving away the custody of something to the chain. And once you put it on the chain, you cannot move it. Nor I can move it as the service provider. All our services that we offer, we don't have a say on what happens once it's locked. Someone say, hey, I did a mistake, I need to unlock because I'm swapping my token, whatever. I cannot do anything for you. That's the chain, not me, right? So this is kind of the same idea, like related to security of tokens, but this is more focused on the liquidity providers side. Okay. So now, why is this data interesting not only for investors, companies, but also trackers. Like we need, in the future, we believe in the future of the chain, of the blockchain, and the way it's going to, because it moves very fast. But we believe that easing access to such data is going to be capital in the future, both for investors, companies, and also for what we call, and what we like to call in crypto, regulation and mainstream adoption, right? Like trusting the chain rather than just trusting people providing white papers. So who would need this kind of data? Like, hey, I want to know what's the circulating supply of token XYZ. Read the white paper, or just make a standard call on the chain that is actually calculating what's unlocked and what's locked from a vesting contract. One of them sounds scalable, right? So companies that do charting, trading tools, and a bit of token metrics-centric stuff, like Token Metrics itself, the company name, DEX tools that is more focused on the charts. Some may also know additional tools like Bugged Finance, PooCoin, and a bunch of others, right? Like there are plenty of it. But these tools, these companies may need access to the data themselves to see if a company or if a project is serious. Like, do they leverage the chain capabilities to make a point about their tokenomics, which is sometimes ignored a little bit. People would prefer to look at what's outside of the tokenomics. But hey, if you have a tokenized business, you should focus on the token first and its utility and so on, right? So easing access to the data can serve for people providing charting and trading tools. Then for what we call here casual trackers. So I guess all of us in this room ever went to either CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, or CoinStats. And we were all looking for, hey, this token, I want to look into, I don't know, the product, what it does, what it's going to do in the future. But what's the FDV, fully diluted value, and what's the circulating supply? And if you were one day on the other side, so I'm talking to the guys that have a token in this room, or that had a token, or that plan to have a token. If you want to have your own token tracked on one of these platforms, they're going to ask you, hey, what's your circulating supply? So they're going to send you an Excel file that you need to fill with, hey, this is this address that is team control, ecosystem fund, rewards pool. But they basically don't check on chain themselves. They're just going to check, hey, this address exists, there is a balance. Team said it's not part of the circulating supply, so we remove it. For example, we have ourselves 2 tokens on the market. If you look at the 2 of them on CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap, they have different statistics because they pull this information manually. But imagine tomorrow they can just say, okay, token XYZ developer, we can list your token. Your market cap is this. Your market cap fully diluted value is this because we don't need to trust you. We took it from the chain. That's the most decentralized approach, and that's also the most scalable approach, in our opinion, of course. But that's another category of providers and investors that may be interested into getting access to this data in the future. And then you have the specialized analytics tools, namely Messari, which is a very famous one and complete one when it comes to data analytics from the chain. And I actually put this name here because we had a conversation with them, and they're like, hey, UniCrypt, how do you guys calculate the circulating supply? We check the chain, and we check what's locked, unlocked, and so we can deduct a precise circulating supply, right? And Elliptic, I added these guys because I think in the recent events of a collapse of stablecoin, these guys were very involved into, hey, what happened with the Bitcoin? I won't go into the story right now because that's not the point. But for example, such providers may be very interested to get access to this data because that's just giving them additional, cars in their own decks when it comes to figuring out what's happening on the chains behind the scenes and behind the white papers themselves. Final thoughts? These can only be achieved if the security assessments are rock solid. Why would anyone trust a vesting contract if it's not battle tested 1,000,000 times before, right? I think this speaks for itself. We also know what a security assessment is by referring to audits. Is your token audited? Who is the auditor? But in reality, auditors themselves don't like the word audit. They prefer security assessments because, hey, an audit can be anything. I can audit the window. Yeah, it's closed. Then transparent and decentralized code. So this part is a bit tricky and sometimes ideal. I think the best example being Uniswap, decentralized code. Uniswap v2, that was like open source code. So obviously it got forked and enhanced a lot of times. And that means it's also, people may be annoyed that they're going to get their own technology forked. But at the same time, if you're the one being forked, that means people found value and want to evolve it to the next level. So this is a good thing to decentralize your code and make it transparent. Why would anyone trust a contract that is obscured on the chain? Right? And then distributed easier data access, which is referring to what we just talked about in the slide before, and that's to make broader, give people a broader access to this data, because at the end of the day, that's just capital data when it comes to understanding what's happening on any single token that we see on any chain, besides Bitcoin, of course, because we already know this information. Same comment for Ethereum. That's it. Thank you very much. Does anyone have a question? There is no bad question, only stupid answers.
Hi there. I have a question about why all these data about the tokenomics for each project, why isn't on-chain already? Why they ask you to manually provide all these data?
So is the question, why aren't people already using such stuff?
Yeah.
Because I think it's just like a kind of an evolution of the space, because before, like say 5 years ago in 2017, when it was like ICO season, no one was really checking what's happening on chain. Oh yeah, they have this new groundbreaking, revolutionary, a lot of keywords, one after another, and you would not even have a look on the chain. You would be like, okay, I trust these guys. And then DeFi summer came, and I think the biggest companies in this space that launched during this period, they did not necessarily have the need for such trustless and security very advanced tools in a way that they already had the trust of people. So these products saw the light because of after the DeFi summer, which took place in 2020, because we had a ton of projects launching by these times, like this year, say summer 2020 to summer 2021. But there were a lot of new actors, I would say bad actors that were trying to cash grab quickly people and so on. And so these tools saw the light after or during these times. And so now we are at a stage where it got used first by very small projects. I mean, for example, ourselves, we started with $50. We did not start with $8 gazillion, for example. So it's like you're very small, and if you want to prove your worth at the very beginning, nowadays you have to use these kind of tools. It was not the case before, but now it's the case. So what I'm thinking is that we're entering, because the space moves very fast, and we're entering a phase where it came from the very low cap, sorry for that, shitcoins, that now we're transitioning to the more we go and the more the bigger projects are using these kind of trustless tools. Because I think I don't need to tell you and to remind you and all of us in this room the number of hacks that occurred due to these kind of non-so-secure setup. But now we know that we can do it from the chain, right?
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Just to build on the previous question, I agree that now when you launch a project, you have these powerful tools where you can say to your customers, you don't need to trust me, you can use this. But what kind of freaks me out is that companies the sizes of CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, still ask to just send me an Excel sheet when it's so trivial today on any chain, not only on Ethereum, to find this data in a basic explorer. Right? So what does that say about the wider industry?
That's actually a very interesting question because we had the chance to discuss, I think it was by the end of March of this year, at the Avalanche Summit that took place in Barcelona. We had the chance to discuss with CoinGecko core team. And believe it or not, they were in demand for exactly what we provide as a tool. And they were even asking us to go further, like, hey, we know that you guys have the information from the chain. You display it in your UI, your front end, so people can figure it out easily, but we want you guys to provide us APIs so that we can reflect this data straight in CoinGecko and accelerate our listing processes when it comes to new tokens. So there is demand for it. And at the same time, how do you provide, this is a question for us, by the way, more, but how do you provide these APIs that CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap may talk about in the near future? Because if I am the one providing you the API, that means CoinGecko doesn't trust the project anymore, but they trust me instead, or UniCrypt as a company, right? So it's not ideal. So the next question and the next challenge that comes after yours is how do we ensure that the data that we may provide or stream to external third parties is decentralized itself, and it's not like just a single source of information that I can manipulate as per my wishes or not. Yeah.
I understand, but why would, all respect to UniCrypt, but why would CoinGecko even ask for an API from UniCrypt when they can ping the chain that they need to ping? They already have a decentralized service that they are consciously choosing not to use. They are looking an easy way out. Is that a fair assessment?
I'm not sure to what you're referring to by...
Let's say I'm launching an ERC20 token,
Yeah.
right? I call CoinGecko, please list me. They send me an Excel sheet because they don't have an API that checks, the total supply of my coin. Why can't someone go to Etherscan, search for the policy ID or whatever, and find that data? Why don't they put in the work that they should be putting in? Now I'm being a bit aggressive against CoinGecko, but that's the point.
No, but I think that what you're saying here is that CoinGecko should maybe watch themselves what's happening on chain. But when you see something like, well, no matter, but it's related to the ApeCoin example that we took. ApeCoin, if you look on chain, you cannot figure out anything. And it's not against ApeCoin once more. It's like most of the tokens, they have tokenomics, they have off-chain, a lot of stuff, and they're very serious projects. It's just that these projects, as of now, either they don't use this kind of infrastructure, or maybe it's too soon, or maybe they don't trust it yet, right? But when you see projects that are, billions of market cap and are not, as of today, using these kind of decentralized tools to reflect on chain what's actually in the white paper, companies like either CoinGecko, CoinStats, whoever else that provides, a circulating supply and such data, they have to ask the token teams nowadays. But if people start to, use these tools, and it becomes from a service provider, we turn ourselves into ourselves or any other company providing the certain services, by the way, I'm not shilling, into infrastructure provider, then you may have some form of evolution in the listing processes and so on when it comes to token economics. Does that make sense? Thanks.
Can I take a stab at answering what he asked?
Sorry?
Can I take a shot at answering what he asked?
Sure.
It doesn't, no. It doesn't work like that with CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap. I've worked on several projects where you have private groups with them because most of the information is definitely not on-chain. They don't plan to put it on-chain anytime soon. And there's no obligation with projects. So the tokenomic pie chart that you showed is usually just a Medium article for most projects. They just put it on Medium, or they take a picture of it and put it on crypto Twitter, and yeah, this one. And they have no obligation to make any of this public. And oftentimes, strategies in tokenomics change. They might mint a second token, or they might not reduce supply, they might burn supply, or they might make it deflationary after an afterthought. So oftentimes, you don't have the data that you can just pull from Etherscan. And when you collate structured and unstructured data as UniCrypt, you still don't have all the data for every chain. So oftentimes, if there's a very famous chain and they had a massive hack, a wrecked HQ or someone like that has to actually talk to the project to know what happened. Because even the unlocked supply is not deployed on chain, it just sits on a local host somewhere. Mm-hmm. So it's not possible to pull all of this information from anywhere in public sources. It's a good practice, it's great, but there is no standard in the industry that forces people to do this from a tokenomics standpoint. So that's why CMC and CoinGecko often, like in our situation, most of the projects hound them because they're very small teams and they have a lot of tech debt, and you have to beg them to update the token supply, because then people come to your Telegram and hound you for why the data is wrong. And oftentimes, the primary native platform, the price of the token on the platform and the price of the token on CoinGecko is different. And then, you know, people think there's an ARB opportunity, but actually there's not. It's just different. So,
oh yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, I think we just stand as an example of, you know, potential solutions for a part of the market. That's definitely true. Like, I'm not saying, hey, guys, you can use UniCrypt and we're going to reflect you on all single explorers of all chains, right?
No, but I mean, a project can come to you
yeah.
and say, here's my updated information. So then you become like another CoinGecko or another CMC also. But there is no obligation for you to have exacting information because the projects themselves don't necessarily report correct information on chain.
Oh yeah, but it's just like the more reliable information you have, the better it is, right? Yeah.
I wish it was like that, but it's just, it's not, it doesn't work like that anymore.
We can achieve that. I mean, let's see after 6-12 months of bear market, because people, you know, figure out how to do more research and, you know, give additional tools, enhance analytics and so on when the markets are more quiet. Yeah, I think we'll see. Thank you.